Hey everybody, welcome to Storytime. I'm your host, John. Today we have a real special episode for you. Made a new friend today. Sean Mott called in. We had a nice conversation. You may know Sean from his band GhostXship, as well as his podcast, Metalcore Nerds. He also is in a cover band called Career Mode. Coincidentally, those guys are playing a show at The Stage in Williamsville, previously known as Club Infinity. That's this weekend on the 29th. I will be there. I'm going to bring some friends out as well, so make sure you stop by and check that out. It should be a lot of fun. His cover band, Career Mode, do a lot of different genres. They do some emo, they do some hardcore, some heavier stuff, Killswitch Engage, Panic at the Disco. A lot of, they're all over the spectrum. He said it's a lot of fun. I can't wait to see him. It's going to be a good time. We also discussed a lot about some experiences he's had on tour. Sean has played with a lot of bands on their tours, covering for their guitarists and whenever they need them, anything like that. So there were a lot of great stories of that, and Sean shared a lot about how he got those opportunities to fill in for those bands, any experiences he's had overseas with those bands, and it was a great conversation. If you like what you hear, like and subscribe. Make sure you go check out everything Sean's got going on. I'll have all of his stuff in the above the comments below, and enjoy the episode.
We were pissing neon green every day.
That big ball of heat in the sky was too much. I thought there was a bear.
Reality goes, yeah, fresco. That's what I'm saying.
Hey, everybody.
What's up, everybody?
Welcome to
Welcome to
Storytime.
Storytime.
Yeah, but so you were saying you're from you live in Utica now?
I live in Utica now. I grew up in Watertown, which I don't know if you've ever heard of Watertown.
I have. I actually bought my dog there.
Whoa, really? What kind of dog do you have?
Husky.
Oh, that's awesome. I have two corgis and a King Charles Cavalier.
Okay. Very cool.
I love dogs are the best. But yeah, I grew up in Watertown, which is basically nothing besides a military base. And and that's not even in Watertown. It's outside of Watertown. That's the only reason there's anything there now. It's a lot better than when I lived there, but still not great. Also, but pretty much after I went to college in Utica for graphic design, and then I moved back home for a little bit, and then I ended up moving to Syracuse because I used to go to, that's where all the shows happened that were sort of close to me. So I would go to Syracuse a lot, and then I moved out there, lived there forever, and then eventually my now wife and I moved back to Utica. She grew up in Utica. We met in Watertown, but we also kind of hung out during college too. So it's a weird full circle kind of thing, I guess.
Yeah, man, no, that's cool. So you're in GhostXship? Is that Matt Travers was in that, right?
Oh, he's still in it.
He's still in it. Okay.
Kind of back together. We're back together now.
Okay, yeah.
We weren't.
I haven't talked to
years.
Matt in years, so
he had kids and kind of fell off the map a little.
Right, as we all do. I have one on the way myself.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I didn't hear from him for a while, but I'd hear from him every few months or something, and he'd hit me up, and him talking about a new band. It's usually his thing.
Yeah, he's a talented guy. He's
incredible,
very talented guy. Yeah,
incredible musician for sure. 100%.
Very cool. Yeah, so I used to play in a band called The Traditional from Buffalo.
Yes.
So we probably have actually crossed paths in some way because, I'm like Nick Berger. I don't know if you know Nick Berger.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he stood in my wedding. Like, that's how close I am with all those guys. So,
because you toured with the Fortune and Fame like more than once, right?
Just
at least once.
We did a full U.S. 60 days, all of us in one van pulling a trailer.
The big one. Okay, yeah.
The big one.
That's what it is. That's what it is. Yeah.
Yes.
It's so funny that Travers did all those tours with the Fortune and Fame, because most of the GhostXship tours he did not do.
He didn't do that one.
Is that right when he had a kid? Maybe
I think
or
so.
No?
If I'm not really sure. So that was like 2013 or 2014.
It was 2014. That was definitely around when he found out. Because that's when GhostXship broke up that year.
Yeah, I think it was actually, it had to be right around then. So
yeah,
that would actually make sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, dude, it's a small world, honestly.
Yeah, it is. This happens all the time with me. They're like, oh yeah, you know this person. I'm like, yeah. And it's just those weird, you never fully cross paths with someone, even though you've crossed paths with everyone else in their lives.
Right. Yeah.
Wild.
So tell me a little bit about your podcast. You said it's Metalcore Nerds.
Yes.
And I checked it out a bit on YouTube, and you do like a lot of, I noticed, I didn't really check out the interviews, but I saw you do a lot of like record, I'm having a brain fart
album
here.
reviews?
Yeah, album reviews, sorry.
Yeah, it's hard with YouTube because I used to upload full episodes, but the YouTube algorithm hates long form content when you're a small channel. They hates it.
Oh, I'm well aware.
Basically just been focusing. I do clip outs just like you do for every episode. And usually I just upload those to shorts. And that's what I've been focusing on until I can, because that's been helping my YouTube channel grow more than anything. Besides, album reviews worked for a while, but now I actually write album reviews for adobe.com. So I was like, I don't want to write something and then make a video about it. It's kind of silly. It kind of takes away from both of them in ways, I guess, but they're kind of also different mediums. So I've also just not had the time to record separate videos like that either. It's, life is life. So that's what it was. But mainly the podcast is I created it during COVID. I used to be a booking agent. And when COVID happened, also a graphic designer, which I still had some work, but all of my work was mostly music based too. So when the pandemic happened and the music industry shut down, I was pretty as far as things go. And I've been listening to podcasts since like 2016, 2017. So I've always had like a love for them. And then when I had this abundance of time dropped in my lap, I thought, oh, maybe I'll do it. And the main premise of it is that I have people from the music world, whether it's mostly people in bands, but especially at this point, but it's just us talking about pop culture. And now it's kind of evolved into bands who are promoting things that they're working on now. Get to, instead of them doing the usual news roundup of doing every podcast that just talks about their band, that's all they talk about, which there's a lot of great podcasts like that, not taking away from that, but it gives them something different to talk about.
Yeah, so you kind of step away from that.
Exactly. They can talk about something they literally enjoy while still promoting what they have going on. Because I always let them plug at the end, or even I have like a music section in the beginning where I talk about new music, and there's a song of the week every week that features. I usually try to feature like smaller bands, and everything like that. So it's like, because the podcast debuts on Adobe How, which is like a internet radio station, and then it goes on to podcasting platforms right after. So every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern, you can go to adobe.com and listen to it there live, or if not, it's just on every podcasting platform. But that's what it's really become now, is all these band dudes who are going on tour or releasing an album or anything like that, and they get to come on and talk about whatever's current in the pop culture world while still promoting what they have going on. And it's been really dope to meet new people who, I never thought would be into the things I'm into and talk about it. Like I've had two of the guys from Bayside on talking about like Star Wars and Marvel and stuff.
That's awesome.
The drummer of Kill Switch talking about favorite TV shows of all time and stuff like that. So it's been a really cool thing. And that now evolved into me doing, because now I work with all these PR companies because of the radio station kind of shepherd these relationships with PR companies, and they send me a lot of albums early to listen to. And now I can put it to good use because they asked me to start writing album reviews for the site. So it's like I get to write about new albums coming out. And I was already getting some early screeners for TV shows and stuff like that. So I started writing album review or TV show reviews
for like pilots and stuff.
Yeah. It's like, for example, one that just dropped today while we're recording this. It'll be like a week old by the time it comes out. But I just dropped a review for almost the full season of season 4 of Barry on HBO.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So that's been really cool. I've been kind of getting them slowly but surely over the past year or so. But now that I have like a bigger platform to kind of showcase my thoughts on it, that's helped a lot. So that's been really cool. And by the time this comes out, I'll have another review for this show called Love and Death. It's based on a true story. It stars Elizabeth Olsen. And it's basically like it takes place in the 70s and 80s, super small church town. And Elizabeth Olsen's character is just like, I want to have an affair with someone else's husband. And then it kind of leads into like a murder. And it's like all about that. But it really happened. So it's cool. I mean, HBO doesn't really miss. So
agreed. Yeah. That's really cool that so you started this podcast and all of this has come from that. I mean, it's clear that you've had some connections with like, the everything else that you've done in the past and that you're still doing, but that's awesome. That's great to see that's leading that way for you. So that's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Typically what we try and do on this podcast is, my whole vision when I started this was I've got so many stories from touring, as I'm sure you do as well. And I just coming home and, you hang out with your friends and you're like, oh, this happened and this happened, right? And there are those stories that like we leave on the road, right? And those are the ones that like, if you want to share it, great. But if you don't, that's totally fine too. I'm open to whatever. But so basically, I want to know some stories about anything you've experienced on the road, like cool, crazy, amazing, anything, it says here, you gave me a little list of just some stuff, some bullet points that you maybe wanted to talk about. Lionheart in Europe. What's that about?
Yeah. So my life has been so weird as like some things end or some things begin. It's like a floodgate. I don't understand it, but I'm very grateful for it. The night of GhostXship's last show, I'm back at home, and we've played with Lionheart a bunch in the Northeast. Mm-hmm. And one day, jokingly, they were like, "Oh, I thought they were joking." They're like, "Oh, you got to fill in for us sometime." And I'm like, "Let me know, I'll do it."
Yeah.
And months later, I get this text the night of the last GhostXship show, from the singer Rob, and he's like, "Hey, do you want to fill in for us in guitar in Europe?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do." So if anyone knows Lionheart now, they're like massive in Europe, play to like thousands of people headlining. I played their first headline tour in Europe, which they were selling out like 600, 500, 600 cap rooms. But that was the first time they showed they're like, oh, wow, we're something in Europe, which was really cool. Some of the funny stories from that. Have you seen Blade, the original Blade with Leather?
Yes.
So the opening scene, like the blood rave?
Yes.
So we played in Paris and we played at a nightclub. And when you play in big cities on a bus tour, they have to do this thing called a bus call because they have nowhere to park the bus. So they have to go like outskirts to park the bus and wait until the show's over. So you usually have a time where you have to come back and that's when the bus is going to meet you. So for Paris, it was like midnight and the show ends like normal show time, like 10:30 or something like that. So the venue was nice enough to let us keep our stuff in the green room while we go like walk around because it turns into a legit nightclub after the show's over.
Right.
And so we go back to get our stuff after like, oh, we know the bus is coming. And I walk in and it feels like the opening scene of Blade. I was waiting for blood to come down. It didn't, but that's what it felt like. I felt like I was walking into the opening scene of Blade. That's it was like that
ominous feeling walking in there.
Yeah. But it was awesome. It was so cool. I'm like, I think I just walked in the opening scene of Blade.
That's
great. Nothing else like really crazy happened in that tour because everyone's just kind of like normal or just like used to touring. The singer Rob, I don't know if you've seen the singer Rob of Lionheart, he's like fucking insanely jacked.
Okay.
And every day for catering, he would get rice and chicken breast every day. And that's all he would eat. And I know one day I did see him go on kind of like, I think he had like a mental breakdown of just eating chicken and rice for a month straight. And it was just me and him in one of the green rooms. And they take care of you in Europe. It's like vastly different from the States in the way they take care of it. Because there's always almost always. I think one time there wasn't a green room, but like you can't complain about one time. But they always, in one venue, it was like they owned an apartment building next to the venue. And that was like our green room. We got to just hang out. They had food up there, the whole 9 yards.
That's the dream.
And like almost every venue has a shower. So you get to shower every day. It's like, it's crazy how they take care of people over there. It's honestly incredible. So we're hanging out there. It's just us two there. And he's like, dude, I should eat some bread, man. He's like, but I can't eat bread. And I'm like, dude, you can eat a piece of bread. You'll be fine. And he was just like freaking out about eating a piece of bread. That was...
So when you were on that tour, was there like any pranks or anything?
No, not that one. Not that I remember. Really,
was it with another band? Like, was there a package, or was it just Lionheart and then?
It was a 4-band package. Desolated was direct support. This band Fall Brawl from Germany played, and then I think this band I think they're called Wolfpack. They were from Paris. Okay. So it was, and we were all in the same bus. But it was a big bus. Like everyone had their own bunk. It was like downstairs was kind of like a little hangout spot, and then all upstairs were bunks.
It was a double decker.
Yeah,
that's great.
All in the same bus. So yeah, it was funny because like after Lionheart, I kind of had an existential crisis with music and sold all my gear and didn't want to play it. And everyone's like, why don't you want to play in a band anymore? And I'm like, I just did a month-long tour on a bus. And then after that, like a few months later, I did a fest with them in Canada that was headlined by Blink-182 and Korn. And I was like, so I just did those things. I don't really know what I'm going to do that's going to be cooler than that.
Right.
So I don't want to. It was kind of that thing. And it was like when GhostXship broke up, it was not the best. We kind of left on really bad terms. Obviously, we're good now because we're together again.
Right.
But I think we're all just like tired and stressed and wanted very different things out of the band. And I was like in the middle of writing a full length for the band, and it kind of all just fell apart. And I think I was just like it's like done with music. I was like, I don't even want to think about it. And then I weirdly got into the music industry another way, and that kind of filled those gaps, or so I thought, until I started playing music again. And I was like, wow, I was really missing this stuff. But yeah, there was no pranks in that one, which is kind of funny because you kind of think there would be in a bus full of like 30 dudes.
Right.
But not really. It was kind of like wild because even in Europe too, that you always share like a backline. And usually heads, because you rent a backline from like a company and everything, and everything's like good to go. It's pretty easy. And being like the headline band, usually the support, like the load-ins are easy. You have 30 people and it's a shared backline.
Oh yeah. Everybody grabs one thing and you're good to go.
Yeah, it's not that crazy, but usually they try to take care of it and not even like bother the headliners.
Right.
Which is kind of wild. But yeah, it was all pretty smooth. It was just long because it was a month long. And there was no off dates. It was just
and then you came home and you've had a taste of the promised land, and you were like, "How do I go home?"
Yeah,
and just play to 40 people potentially in one city because you're not big in that city. I know that I don't know the feeling of thousands of people for a month straight, but the feeling of, oh, we played this really great show, and then the next one there's 20 people, and you're like, why do I do this? So I feel you on that.
Yeah, I think anyone in a band can feel those kind of moments, because especially doing like DIY tours, you can have a show that's so sick and you're like, wow, you're so far away from home, but that show just crushed. And then the next day you play to like 5 people and you're like, fuck.
Yeah, but those are the ones that make you want to keep going, because you're like, if I could get to this and just continue this on a regular basis of that kind of show.
Yeah.
But it's getting to that point. That's the hardest part.
Dude, 100%. It really is the hardest part. So I can't commend bands enough that are just so willing to grind and do the thing. I mean, I witnessed it booking those bands, and a lot of those bands have moved on to be like very successful, which is cool. Which is cool to see, you know. But yeah, it's a grind, and it's hard to be in a band, in period, especially a touring band trying to like actually do it. It's rough. It's rough.
Especially in today's world where there's millions of bands and like thousands upon thousands starting new ones every day. You know, like the new Better Lovers. Did you listen to it today?
Oh yeah,
it's awesome. It's so good. Yeah. It's so good. I'm very excited for that because those are the hometown homies, and then the dude from Dillinger Escape Plan, and dude, I'm excited for that one. But
yeah, and what a tour for them to start on, which makes sense. They've kind of all earned it.
Yeah,
but damn, that's sick.
Yeah, they've put in the work over the years, so it's cool to see. Like, everybody was heartbroken when ETID broke up, so it was like for them to just dive right back in. It's cool to see,
Yeah, I knew they were reports. They were kind of all like, yeah, we're still going to do music. I just had no idea Will Putney, and I heard about it a few weeks ago. Just from like a mutual friend. They were like, somehow it came up in conversation. And I was like, oh, do you know who else is in that band? Like, oh, Will Putney and the singer of Dillinger. And I was like, what?
Yeah. No, they made a super group. That's what they did.
Yeah. Well, my guess was it was going to be Josh from 68 in the Chariot, but it kind of makes sense that it wouldn't be because, I'm just curious to see if Will Putney's actually going to tour with them. Because that's a long tour.
That is. Yeah. That's a good question. I feel like maybe in this one he would because it's the first outing, But yeah. I mean, we'll see, I guess.
He does everything with End. I just know that it's so funny because like he is fit for an autopsy, but he never plays with them live.
Right, yeah. That's funny.
Such a wild dynamic, but it makes sense,
Right. Yeah. So next on the list here, I actually wrote this down. So I want to know your favorite show memory. Like it could be any show you've ever played. I know. So I saw some footage. I remember seeing footage of the first Ghost Ship show, and that looked bonkers. It looked crazy.
That's one of the most special shows I've ever played.
Yeah, that one, even just watching it, you're like, wow, people knew what you guys had, and they just wanted to leave it all there with you,
Yeah, it was perfect. It almost made me hesitant because people asked me for years, like, yo, is Ghost Ship ever getting back together? And I always said never. I was like, it's never going to happen because I didn't see a reason until the singer asked and was like, hey, we should do this. And I'm like, sure. If everyone's down, fuck it. Let's do it. And it's felt amazing to like reconnect with those dudes and play music with those dudes again. But that show is definitely one of them. There's another Ghost Ship show. I'm going to give you multiple answers. I'm going to cheat a little bit.
That's perfect.
I think the show in Syracuse that showed us that people gave a fuck. At first we opened, it was Stick Your Guns Terror counterparts in Expire. We opened the show in Syracuse. It got shut down during Terror. There was like this big thing with security and the show got shut down. Then Stick to Your Guns did a makeup show for $5 like months later, and we were direct support. And that was like, I think the first show we played that we're like, wow, people like really care about us here. Like people were stage diving with pool floaties. We had this thing called like the Mosh Cam, and we put a GoPro on a helmet and people were wearing it during it. If anyone's listening to this who's been asking where that footage is, I think we have located it and we're trying to make it into something eventually. Awesome. We're working on it. I know people have been asking about that shit for years, so it might actually come to fruition finally, which is exciting because that show was just nuts. And I remember walking off stage and Chris from Stick to Your Guns was right there, and he's like, I don't want to play after you guys. And I almost like fainted because like Stick to Your Guns is one of my favorite bands ever.
Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
I was like, what? I was like, what'd you just say to me? And I mean, they still went out and fucking destroyed too. It was so cool. It was at this old venue. It used to be called like the Polish Home or something. And then it was some different name when we played it. It was just a stage and just a big room. That's all it was. And it was awesome. Another one recently, I have joined the thing that kind of got me back into playing music regularly, which is kind of wild. And it's the reason I asked you to be on this podcast too, is that I play in like an early 2000s, like emo screamo cover band called Career Mode. And it's so much fucking fun because we just play all songs that we grew up loving. But when we play shows, it's like a real show. Like people go off and it's awesome. And before I flew out to play those shows with MBR, we had a show at Turning Stone, which is a casino. It's like in between Utica and Syracuse. And they have like a little rock venue in this new part. And they've played there before. And the last time they played, it was super sick. Like at capacity. They don't really keep capacity because it's kind of like an ever changing of people leaving and coming. But I know at one point it hit capacity or something. I don't know. The room was packed, I guess. But we played there again. It was my first time playing like a full set with them. And I don't know, just something about it was just really special. It was also my wife. She used to shoot shows. And that's how we met. Like in 2007 ish. And this was her first show she shot in like 12 years. And I've been begging her to shoot shows forever. And then she finally did it. I think that probably adds to the specialness of it. Yeah, was that too, is having her do that and having me play the show. And the day after was the Ghost Ship show where we got back together too. So it was a pretty big weekend of that awesome. Too. So those would probably be my answers, I think.
That's awesome. So with the new band, I'm sorry, what was the name again?
Career mode.
Career mode. Okay. So as far as like, I didn't get a chance to check you guys out, but so it's like, is it, if you had to say like, compared to another band, what do you think it would be along the lines of? Because I'm huge into emo, and back in the day, I loved screamo, like Emery and all those bands back in the day. You know, it's that I was huge into those.
So we're a full-on cover band. Like we do not play.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Straight covers. They first started as the name Career Mode. They just did songs off 20 Hawk Pro Skater soundtracks.
That's awesome.
At first, and now it's evolved way because they found out like, oh, that's pretty limiting. So they started playing like Ohio's for Lovers and Take It Back Sunday and stuff like that. And then I joined and kind of tried to coax them into playing heavier songs. Like we started playing Under Oath, we started playing Kill Switch, stuff like that. So it's like we can go from like Newfound Glory to Census Fail to Say Anything to Panic at the Disco to like anything in that time frame we pretty much play. And it's sick. And that's what I meant where it's like it feels like a show, even though we're not playing any of our songs. Right. But like people go, it's not like a normal, it's not like you go see a cover band at like a bar. It's like you come to our show to see a show, which is the dopest thing ever. It's like it's kind of the allure when they asked me to join because their other guitar player just had too much shit going on in his life and just had to leave. And I played, the reason that got me back into playing guitar is that the other guitar player and my wife kept bugging me to like play a song with them. And I was like, I don't even own a guitar. Like, how am I going to play a song with you? And then my wife's like, okay, we're going to buy your guitar, whatever. And then that led into me, you know, playing 2 to 3 hour sets of covers.
Very cool. So we had spoken through, you know, Instagram or text or whatever, and you were saying you kind of mentioned it briefly. You were just with NBR?
Yes.
Yeah. And so what was that?
So they did 2 10-year anniversary shows of their album Cycles. It was kind of the album that like helped break them out in the mold, and they like toured forever off it. And the way that came along is, so they have, it's like a pretty much like a new lineup. Besides the core, the singer and the drummer have been the same since like the jump, like many years ago. One of their original guitar players wrote this last EP with their new guitar player Tron. He used to be in the band To the Wind, and he was in this band Trove with Davey from Vanna that I booked while they were a band, and that's how I met Tron. And I booked No Bragging Rights for a little bit before I quit booking, and then I quit booking. Obviously, my good friend Daniel DeFonce ended up picking them up, and because they finally decided like, hey, we want to play more shows, because they got into like a really bad bus accident years ago, and that kind of like really fucked up their financial situation as a band and kind of sidelined them as to like touring and stuff. They just couldn't make it happen because they just lost so much money off the van totaling and everything like that.
Right.
So they just stopped being a band. They came back with this new album, not really knowing if they were going to play live or not. They just wanted to put out new music. So they put out like a self-titled EP on Pure Noise. And then they realized like, hey, we want to play more shows. And DeFonce hit me up and was like, yo, they're going to play more shows. You should hit them up and fill in for them, because their other guitar player, he has a kid, he has a job. He can't really do shows. And they don't really have a bass player. So he's like, just hit them up, say you can do both, whatever. So I hit up Tron. I was like, I have a guitar, I have a bass, whatever you want me to do, I'm down to do it. And then eventually ended up connecting and we did it. And then so we played Chain Reaction, then we played Las Vegas. It was a little outside Las Vegas, but you could like see the strip from where the venue was.
Oh, that's cool.
Both shows were sold out. Chain Reaction, their hometown show. And I've listened to that band since Cycles came out. So being able to play those shows, I never played Chain Reaction in my life. So getting to play that as my first show to ever play there was really incredible. Like, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to even have played with them, let alone something like that. So that's kind of how that happened. It was kind of like you were talking before. It's like all these weird connections you make throughout the years, and somehow they come together.
Yeah. So do you think you're going to continue playing out with them? Are they going to continue playing out? Do they have plans to?
Yes.
All right, I'll leave it at that because
I can't expand more than that.
That's fine. That's totally fine.
They're in Australia right now, actually.
Okay.
Obviously, I'm not there, but they booked it way before I was even in the picture. And I don't even know if I'm really, like I'm just I think like a permanent fixture of MBR. You know, if they're gonna do stuff, I'll probably be doing it with them. And it was funny, like after we were doing, they're like, man, I wish we were bringing you to Australia. They actually have like an Australian dude filling in for them.
Okay,
it was a lot of money, and they didn't really know how things were gonna go. You know what I mean? It was kind of like I was friends with a lot of them, and they're like, yeah, let's have Sean do this. It'll be cool. Like he's a cool dude. And then after they were like, oh, you actually like care and learn the songs and can play, like sick. You know, it's like one of those, like we didn't know how it was going to go. So yeah, stuff will be happening later this year. That's
very cool.
That's all I'm gonna say.
So when you're doing this stuff, when you're on tour, like with the radio show and the podcast now, like, are you just doing that from wherever you're at, or how's that work?
So for this one, I was really lucky because it was only like I was only gone for like a week because we got there on Tuesday and to like rehearse and then had the 2 shows. So for that one, I already had the week before was already done because, you know, just like you, I record the week before. So we have time to edit and do all the promo stuff and then to turn it in and everything like that. But the week of, Mike from the singer of MBR actually has a podcast called the Walking Blind Podcast. It's him and his other friend, Mike. They talk about mental health and they'll have guests on every here and there. So while I was there, I was like, you're like, yo, we'll both be on each other's podcast and we'll record them both there, everything like that. So it was funny because they kind of just do bullet points and go off the hip, kind of like what you do. When I do my podcast, I'm like a psychopath and I have like not like a detailed outline. It's pretty flow moving, but I take a lot of notes just to make sure I can hit the things I want to hit and, you know, everything like that. Like I just take a ton of fucking notes, and I showed him like the notes and he's like, we should record yours first. You got, okay, we're going to do yours first. So we did theirs first. Then we realized we didn't have enough time to do theirs. So I actually I got to do my episode in their studio. Right. And then I did theirs when I got home virtually like this. So it's kind of funny. He's like, yeah, we're like switching formats, you know?
Yeah. That's funny.
So that's how it worked out with that. With, the thing I can't talk about that's coming up, I will probably need to like pre-record a lot of shit, right? Or maybe think about bringing my stuff and trying to figure that out. I've kind of been going back and forth. I have time to figure it out, but we'll see how that's gonna go. I don't really have a full answer for that. I might just pre-record a lot of stuff and then have it ready and then edit while I'm on the road. Maybe I don't know. Because that's why I had to do that. I'd edit while I was on the road and on the flight home. So I made sure I had it done by Monday. Right. But it's pretty easy when you're just sitting in a van doing nothing anyway. You know? Yeah,
that'll keep you busy for sure. Yeah. I know it keeps me busy.
It's not easy.
So as far as pranks and stuff, do you have any stories as with pranks on tour or anything like that? You can leave names out if you need to. I'm
calling out Matt Travers on this one. This is a good one.
There you go.
So we were actually talking about this while we were practicing for the Earth Crisis show, is that we went on this, it was like a 5-day run, and we went on our good friend Matt Spencer. He filmed like pretty much, you know, he did film every GhostXship music video, and he's like a professional like videographer, like does crazy commercials, has worked on films, stuff like that. The dude is an amazing talent, but he would always like hook us up to like hang out with us and do videos. He did this is a side tangent, but he did this really dope video for, if you just search GhostXship the Here and Now, we did pretty much a remake of the Wayne's World, like Bohemian Rhapsody, but us doing a music video in it. It's pretty great if you haven't watched
awesome.
It. It's
I just took a note. I'm going to check that out later.
I'm very proud of it to this day. But he would do all these videos. So he was doing a live video for us. So it's like we played 5 shows. He took a bunch of footage and made it into a video. But he had this, I can't remember the name of his band back then, but he always made these bands where he wrote everything and then he just found dudes to play it. And he played the shows with us. So we were driving like middle of the night drive. So we just start throwing shit at each other on the highway. You know, I'm sure anyone who's been on tour has done that. And maybe we're just psychopaths. I don't know. So we start throwing shit at each other from van to van. Travers takes, it was either melted ice cream or a milkshake, and throws it, cakes their windshield. with melted ice cream.
Like the shit you see in movies.
Yes. And you try to wipe it.
Yeah,
it's not going anywhere. Thank God it was in the middle of the night, because if it was in like broad daylight in a busy highway, we probably would have killed them. Like, no joke. But it was wild. It was so funny. We're like, okay, you guys are good. We're good. We're good. There was also another time, also a Matt Travers story. We somehow had fireworks and we were outside a venue in Georgia somewhere. And he starts to set them off, and then a cop came, and we all ran and left him. So he was the one like setting off fireworks. And they're like, "What are you doing?" They just like were like, "Don't do it," which was no big deal.
Yeah,
yeah. And then I was in this band called Atlas too, and that's how I actually got into GhostXship. Is I played in this band Atlas that played with GhostXship all the time, and then their guitar player at the time, Steve Port, he ended up joining this punk band Off Their Heads because he was actually a drummer. He drummed in the band Another Breath as well.
Okay.
And he also drummed in Polar Bear Club until they broke up too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Really good drummer, really good guitar player too. So I started filling in for them, and then eventually they're just like, "Steve's never coming back. Do you just want to be in the band?" And I was like, "Yeah, cool." And then that just ended up me being in the band. But I was on this other tour with the other band, Atlas, and something similar happened where we opened the side doors of the van and we just threw a loaf of bread into the band. You probably know that with Daggers, we toured with them.
Yeah.
From Rochester.
Yep.
And we just threw a loaf. He threw a loaf of bread at them. And then like 30 minutes later, we get pulled over. And it's because we threw this loaf of bread, and he got like a $200 fine for like littering. Cause it's like, they have crazy fines in Tennessee for littering on the highway. That was pretty funny.
Meanwhile,
really stupid,
meanwhile, the singer of Lionheart was freaking out about that bread that you threw.
Great callback. Yes. He was like, "I wanted that bread." What the fuck? You know, those are probably the best pranks I think that we've played on each other. I know there's probably a million other better prank stories, but those were the ones that stick out for sure.
That's great. That's great. We everybody does the age old prank of, oh, let's take the drummer's drums while he's playing his last song of the last day of tour, right? So original, but we've all done it.
Funny. It's funny. It
hilarious, works. Especially when you're the drummer. It's so funny. No, that's great. So you mentioned that you were doing some stuff with like ZZ Top and as far as designs and stuff.
Yeah. I'm the retainer designer for Shelter Music Group, and it's a big management company. I think they're also like the parent company owns BMG Records, which is like a really big record label.
Yeah.
And I have a friend. His name's Jonathan King. He's a manager. He manages like Volumes and Moontooth and stuff like that. But his partner manages Dance Gavin Dance, Dying Fetus, bands like that.
Okay.
And they got absorbed by Shelter Music Group, and he knew I did design stuff. So he eventually was like, they had me do a test thing like forever ago. I think it was probably before the pandemic or right after, something like that. But Serge Tankian, the singer of System of a Down, put out a solo EP, and they had me do pretty much all the promo stuff. Like if you see bands they put out and it's like new album coming out, whatever date. And like little videos that do that. I did all of those for that. And then I was like, man, that's fucking sick. I just did stuff for the singer of System of a Down. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then forever after, he's like, "Hey, you free to hop on a call?" And I was like, "Yeah, dude, sure." And it was him and then one of his bosses. And they're like, "Hey, we want to bring you on. We'll pay you X amount of dollars a month. And then you just do whatever we send you." And I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And the first thing I did that week was I did like an ad mat for Dance Gavin Dance, and then I did pretty much the same thing I did for Surge for ZZ Top. Like I did all of their promo marketing for that live album they did like a year ago at this point. So it's like, and that was like, I call that my like parent brag for designing stuff, because I've done some designs for some really cool bands. Like I've done t-shirt designs through Cold Cuts for like Stick to Your Guns and like Turnstile and Bane and stuff like that. Or I did, an ad mat for Napalm Death and like Dying Fetus and stuff. But if I tell it to my mom, she's like, "Who? What the fuck are you talking about?" But I go to my mom, I'm like, "Yeah, I just did stuff for ZZ Top." And she's like, "Whoa."
Yeah, that's the real deal. I mean, all of them are, but ZZ Top, who doesn't know ZZ Top?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
it's been super cool because that was like the one thing through connections in music that I got my mom into free for a ZZ Top show. And she was like bragging to her friends. She's like, yeah, my son works for them. He got us into this. And I was like, nice. I was like, cool.
So did you get to like meet them?
No.
Okay.
I didn't get to meet them because you all deal with, their team.
Their
I don't
PR
deal with
and
them
everything.
directly. Yeah. It's just me talking to their managers. You know what I mean?
Right.
Be like, hey, we need this stuff. Me sending this. They're like, if there's any changes, like, oh, hey, can you tweak this? Whatever. Here's the final files. That's kind of how it goes.
So
I usually don't speak with the band ever.
Right. Yeah. So unless they were to hire you themselves.
Yes. Usually at that level, never happens though.
Right.
They don't even touch that stuff.
So when they send you the stuff, are they sending you just like all the files of like video footage that they were like, this is what we want?
Pretty much. Yeah. For that stuff, like I would get like music videos, which at that point they weren't even really music videos. It was kind of like a live studio session. And that was like the album. So it's like they would send me the raw files of the studio session. I would get like the album artwork layered so I can take all the stuff out of it and everything like that.
Okay.
That's usually what I get. And now at this point, like I'm so wired of doing these things. I'm like, if there's something missing, I'm like, oh, hey, I need this, and this too to make this happen. They're like, oh, okay, we'll get that for you. Blah, blah, blah. Send it here. Cause I did a lot of stuff for them. Like I did retail one sheets, which is like all the information of like vinyls that they send out to retailers and stuff like that. Like stuff people will never see in their lives that I had to do just for like back end stuff. And like even like a one sheet for them with just like all of their tour dates, all of the verbiage of the release, all of their social media numbers, which again is just like stuff industry people see, people don't even in the real world don't even see, just stuff like that. But it's cool to me. I'm like, this is sick.
Absolutely. That's awesome. That's like, so I'm an electrician. I'm an electrician. I'm an apprentice right now. So, but this stuff is what I love, like the editing, the photo. I'm horrible at Photoshop. I'm like learning as I go, I know like the basics, maybe a little bit more than the basics, but like barely. I wouldn't even say that I know a little bit more, but like, that's the type of stuff I love. So for like you to see somebody get into that, that's awesome. That's so cool that it's, you just more people that it's the networking. You started at a certain point and everybody brought you along, that's cool. That's awesome.
Pretty much. It's like, that's what I went to college for was graphic design. I only got a 2-year degree. One of my professors said I would never do anything in design on a 2-year degree. I want to like go up to him and be like, yo, I designed shit for ZZ Top, bro.
Just send him an email with all the shit that you've done. Just be like, what's up?
Because for years I worked for like sign shops. I worked for this furniture company where I did magazine layouts. Like I've done like anything you can think of.
Yeah, anything you could get paid for.
Yeah, and that was like my 9 to 5 for the longest time. I ended up going to this company in Syracuse that they do like anything you think to a car. Like they're the biggest place for remote car starters, but they did like wheels, tires, lift kits, things I do not give a fuck about.
So you worked for Pimp My Ride. I got it.
Kind of, yeah. Honestly, yes. Yeah. No exhibit, but yes.
Oh man.
Maybe Redneck Pimp My Ride might be more like not that they were rednecks, but when you
it's the equivalent.
Lots of lifted trucks.
Okay.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. But that's what I did before I ended up leaving them eventually. It's like, because the reason I moved out to Utica is my wife's mom got sick with cancer and we moved back here near the end of that. And we ended up getting their house. So that's like why we live here now.
Okay.
So it's like, that's why I live in Utica. But that was like the point where I could start to fully work for myself. And then stuff like Shelter and just other promotion like I do a lot of flyers for like a bunch of promotion companies and stuff Very like cool. that. That's the stuff that helps me pay my bills.
Yeah, no, I feel that. Anything to make ends meet. So back to your European tour. What was your favorite country?
Ooh,
like what your favorite place you played there? Okay,
Spain wasn't my favorite place to play, but it was probably one of the coolest places to be. That was because we didn't really explore a lot. It was kind of like you get to the show at like noon, you gotta load in, you wait, you sound check, you wait, you play the show, you leave. But there were some days where like we're gonna go explore, we don't care if we sound check, because you use the same back line.
Right.
Everything is sound checked. You do a line check anyway. We were like, it's going to be fine, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So like in Paris, we were with a band from Paris. So like they took us out. We went to the Eiffel Tower. They just like showed us around. It was super dope. We played in like Switzerland, and we went to like a random coffee shop near the venue, which was pretty cool just to be like in Switzerland.
Yeah.
But just walking around in Spain was super sick. Like, and it was the tour was in February, but it was like 50 to 60 in Spain.
Okay.
So that was sick to be like, oh man, it's like 60 degrees.
Right.
You know, we're both from upstate New York. February, it's like the dead of winter.
Like negatives.
Awful.
Single digits.
Terrible.
Yeah.
So much snow, so fucking cold. Awful. So I mean, even being over there, it snowed like once in Europe. It was so weird. It wasn't like warm, but it was manageable, and there wasn't really snow. And of course, like I'm on a bus, so I'm not driving. You know, I don't have to worry about that. I go on the bus and I go to sleep. You know, it's like easy. But being in Spain and walking around and it being like really nice was sick. That was super cool. That was one of the ones I remember. And Paris being cool too, because we kind of explored throughout Paris. Those are the big standouts, because there was a lot of Germany, like a ton. There's so many places to play in Germany.
Really?
Yeah.
How many shows did you play in Germany?
Probably like 20.
Really?
Maybe a little less, but a lot of it was in Germany.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. Because it was mostly Germany. We played a couple shows in France. We played this really weird town in France. I don't even remember the name of it, but it was a really weird show. There was like a few hundred people there, but everyone just stood there and stared at you.
So they weren't like going nuts or anything?
No, they were just standing there.
Yeah. So like an older crowd.
Yeah, but I don't think they were older. But yes, same sentiment. Yeah. And the one funny part about too is obviously I was not in the band. I was just like a hired gun. But like Europeans love getting shit signed. So I would sign so many CDs and I was not in the band. They would like point at the guy in the liner notes who looks nothing like me. At this time, I had the really long hair, like super long hair. And this one guy had super short hair and like a beard. And they'd be like, "This is you, right?" And I'm like, "Sure." I'm like, and then by the end of it, I was hanging out with Desolated so much, and they all had long hair too. So everyone thought I was in Desolated, like fan wise. I would be like hanging out with their merch table, and like people would come up to get pictures taken, and they'd be like, "Yeah, you too." And I'm like, "Okay,
great. I'm not gonna fight it."
Sure, yeah. Like I never once was like, "Oh no, I'm not in the band." Like I was just like, "Yeah, whatever, man. There you go. There you go."
Did you guys have?
That is a funny story I can bring up too. When we played that crazy fest in Canada, we played pretty early in the day, and Comeback Kid played on our stage right after. But there was this guy had this guitar, and it was he was doing this big raffle, and he was having like all the bands sign it. So we were with I don't know if you've heard the band Pure Bliss. They're kind of newer, but it's the same singer of this band. He was in this band Meth Mouth before that, and I was actually booking them, so I got them on this weekend with Lionheart. We did that show. We did a show with Madball in Toronto because they were also on the fest, and then we played a show in Syracuse. So they didn't play the fest, but they were there with us obviously. And so Brandon was there too, and he signed the guitar too, not being in any band that played. Which was really funny.
That is funny. That's
even me. I'm like, I'm not even really in the band. I'm signing this fucking guitar that's probably signed by, Jonathan Davis of Korn.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. I would never say no. I was like, why would I create a weird, awkward moment for someone? I'm just gonna sign it. Whatever.
It's funny how much people just like want a signature in case too, because a lot of times they have no idea.
Yeah, and the singer of MBR kept texting the MBR group chat and being like, "Oh, people want this album signed," and I was like, "I am not." I didn't even answer it, but I found out later it's because he got stuck at merch and he hates selling merch, and he would end up having these like really big conversations with people because like MBR is like very big about like mental health and like that.
Right.
They're a band with a message and stuff, so people really like gravitate to Mike and like want to talk to him about that stuff and everything like that. But I found out later that he was just trying to get people so he could pass the merch thing off on people.
Yeah.
And not really sign stuff. But in my head, I'm like, that was not me. I am not signing that stuff. I do not feel right doing that.
It feels weird to begin with. Like there's been a few times that I was asked at being in the traditional, and I'm like, I'm just nobody, right? Like, I work like at a music venue cleaning up after the shows when I'm at home, right? Like, I pull produce at like the local produce shop. Like these people, they're in their moment, they think this is gonna be huge, or these guys were great, but yeah, it just feels weird. It definitely feels weird.
Definitely happened to Atlas when we played, because I would hustle tickets like it was nobody's business. So we always played the big shows because we hustled the tickets.
Right.
I don't even remember what show it was, but some girl was like, "Hey, will you sign sign me? You can sign me wherever." And I signed her forehead.
Yeah. It's such a dick move, but it's like, you gave me this power.
They asked for it. And I'm like, okay, right in the forehead.
Yeah. On the last episode, a friend of mine, Sean Gorse, he played in the band Young English. They were like a emo band, pop punk band. And he was telling me that he was on Warped Tour and as like, a roadie or something on Warped Tour. And he had a signing as Justin Bieber because people thought he looked like Justin Bieber. So he went to like a tent, one of the tents, and just sat down, and he said like a ton of people lined up. And he's like, I had this like different haircut, so I kind of looked like him. He's like, so I just started signing everybody's stuff, but when I signed it, I wrote Gorse because his last name's Gorse. He's like, there's tons of people out there who are like, Justin Bieber signed my shirt, and then it just says Gorse in big, capital letters or whatever. It's funny.
Incredible. That is amazing.
And people are just so dumb. They don't know. I love it. It's great.
So it's kind of related in a way, but my wife manages Hot Topic.
Okay.
And a few years ago, she manages the one in Syracuse, and like band people come in sometimes. Like it just happens when they play like the amphitheater or whatever. Corey Taylor came in and shopped them.
Oh.
So she sold t-shirts to fucking Corey Taylor.
That's
and it was
awesome.
like 2 days before Slipknot played there or whatever. But there was a whole line of people behind him buying Slipknot t-shirts that had no idea who he was. Like no idea. No idea.
That sucks.
And like, she was like, "I obviously know who you are." And he's like, "Yeah, can we keep it on like the DL?" And she's like, yeah, cool. As long like, can I get a picture? And he's like, "Yeah, of course, no big deal." And I was in the mall at that point, and she's like, "Corey Taylor's in my store." And
yeah,
like, I think I just saw him walk by, and she's like, "He's in my store right now." So I came in and just watched because I knew if I tried to talk to him and be like, "Hey, what's up, man? You wrote like the heaviest album of all time," and he would be like, "Cool," and then I would have felt like a complete dumbass. So I was like, I'm not going to say shit because I don't want to fanboy, because I'm sure he's been fanboyed to 20 million times.
Yeah.
And I'm just good with that. My wife sold him t-shirts. Cool enough for me. Cool enough for me.
Right. Yeah.
It was just so funny because I had that conversation. Like I have this conversation in the podcast all the time of how we live in like a nerd bubble. And it's like, and someone pointed this out to me, and it's like, that's the same thing about like music. Like we are obsessed with the shit. The general audience isn't. They're just like, we like this band and that's it. And I was like, oh wow, because I was always like, these people are idiots. They didn't know it was Corey Taylor in front of them. And he was like, dude, think about it. He's like, those people really probably don't know what he looks like. He's like, think about like the biggest band you can think of, and like, do you know what they look like? Yeah. And I'm like, he's like, do you know what Imagine Dragons looks like? And I'm like, no. And he's like, exactly. And I was like, nope. It like blew my mind. And I was like, those people are idiots. They're just normal people.
If you think about it too, it's like, he wears a mask, In Slipknot, he wears a mask. In Stone Sour, he does not wear a mask. Right? Which, actually, Stone Sour, the bassist, lives in Buffalo.
Oh, wow.
Johnny Chow. So I worked with Johnny Chow. He plays bass for them. I worked with him at Town Ballroom in Buffalo. Wow. And he kind of, it was weird, the story. He told me the story because I used to hang out with him all the time. I used to go out drinking with him after the shows. And he was telling me a story how, like, he had a manager that was like, hey, he was a hired gun, basically. And he was like, "You have an option here. They know what you're capable of. They've heard you. They know, through the grapevine, you're a great bassist and everything." And they basically told him, I'm paraphrasing, I may be dead wrong. This was a while ago that he told me this story. So allegedly this conversation. But anyways, he basically said they told him, hey, you can either do a tour with Slipknot or you can potentially join Stone Sour and then see where that goes. So he was like, I'm get paid for one tour or potentially career. He went for the career route.
Yeah.
And it's working out great for him. So that's
right.
pretty cool. Yeah.
Damn, that's sick. Damn,
yeah.
That's so cool.
It's funny too, because he's very, if you see, like, do you know what he looks like? He's got this big burly beard. And if you knew what that band looked like, you would spot him in a group of 10,000 people just because he's so like distinct, Okay. But he would tell me these stories of people that like, oh, yeah, then I can't walk down the street in certain cities now because people just know. They just know who he is. But you wouldn't think anything of it. It's just crazy how that stuff happens. So
yeah, it's nuts. Because I can only imagine. It's like I talk about this all the time with famous people. Like they can't live normal lives. And some bands of that nature kind of are the same to a certain degree. Without getting like punished by normal people when they're just trying to like go to the mall or go to a movie or something.
Right. Yeah.
I feel like bands at that level are probably in the middle ground where they can kind of live a normal life, but at the same time, they probably get ambushed like big famous people probably do. And I can't even imagine that shit. I've had people come up to a show and be like, oh yeah, you were in GhostXship, right? Which is like, to me, I'm like, what? My
so
band?
Cool.
Stuff like that, but it's not like, like fucking mobs of people are like, oh my God, it's the guy from that thing. It's no one's doing that. But I can only imagine what even like a fraction of that is like.
Yeah, like look at E-Tid. Anytime they did Tid the Season, they did their Christmas show, like they were punished by fans. But that's what they did it for. They wanted to, have that experience with the fans. But now look at like Andy Williams is a professional wrestler. Yeah. Which is why he's not doing the new band or whatever, but yeah, that's the dream.
Yeah. Good for him, man, because I know he's been at that for a while. And when I saw he got signed to AEW, I was like, fuck yeah.
What's crazy is he actually
about wrestling. So,
he actually wasn't that like doing it that long for him to get into
years,
it.
Right?
Yeah, but most people go like 15 years before they get into that thing, Yeah. So he linked up with his tag team partner, who's from Buffalo as well, obviously. But he was a professional wrestler for like Impact and like the smaller companies.
Oh yeah, I used to see him all the time in local shit. I would see him wrestle all the time. So when I saw he teamed up with Andy, I was like, oh, sick. I've watched that dude wrestle for like 5 years.
Yeah, right. So it just worked out perfectly. It's just so cool to see.
Yeah, it's
especially awesome. As a big wrestling fan.
Yeah, and even like Brody King being like a cool dude too, which is the same. I love seeing worlds collide. I love it. Yeah, it's like Zicky Dice. Do you know who that is? Oh yeah. Yep,
dude, he's the singer of Heart to Heart. You know, so and we like we played a show with those guys in Erie and got to know them. We like went to the strip club afterwards and stuff, and it was great, meeting those guys. But he actually is the reason we signed to the label we signed to. He like reached out to the owner and was like, "You need to sign these guys. Like their next record, boom."
What label was it?
Anchor 84.
I was gonna say, was it Anchor 84? I talked with them briefly, but I knew them. I think I worked with them on design stuff because they signed this band, Still Rings True, who I was super close with back in the day. I'm sure you guys may have played with them or at least knew who they were.
We knew who they were. We never got to play with them, but yeah,
they were a really good band. But yeah, I knew they were on Anchor 84. I think I did their album layouts when they were on it and stuff.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
They were always really cool. I think that's how I knew their stuff because I think we were in talks with them for when GhostXship left Seven Dagger.
Okay,
but we ended up going with this label Inner Strength from like Poughkeepsie area. I think he lives in like Philly now, but also a really cool guy.
Very cool. Yeah, how long was GhostXship grinding before you guys got on Seventh Dagger and all that?
I joined and they were already on Seventh Dagger.
Oh, okay.
They kind of got signed to Seventh Dagger like immediately. They put out a demo and then they put out a full length, which was a lot of the demo re-recorded. On Seventh Dagger. And then after I joined, we put out an EP on it, and that's when Seventh Dagger was kind of fizzling out. So we kind of parted ways, and then we did our last EP through Inner Strength.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It was
very cool.
GhostXShip was kind of a weird thing because it was like that Cold Truth video kind of went like not viral, but I know it's like over 1 million views across a couple of channels.
That's pretty viral.
It's a lot of, so it's like that helped. A lot of the shows we played were pretty cool. We didn't really play any shows that like sucked, and even if they were like low people, like the people there like were there to see us, which was cool. Because I remember we did this is kind of relevant to what just happened with like Coachella, like Knocked Loose played Coachella. The first time I met the Knocked Loose dudes, they opened a show we played in Indianapolis in a fucking garage.
Oh, wow.
And I think it was right when that first EP just came out.
Okay.
Like that long ago. And then they actually did a weekend of some of our last shows. We played like Poughkeepsie, somewhere in Massachusetts, and Hartford, Connecticut. And they played it with us. And them playing those shows was them playing Counting Worms live for the first time. And I was like, you guys are going to be fucking massive. And they were like, no, we're not. Like,
so modest.
No, they even are now. Like, I haven't really talked to them in a while. I kind of keep in touch here and there. Usually when I see them at a show, like I'll kind of be like, hey, what's up, guys? And stuff like that. But they've always just been the most down to earth dudes. And it's cool to see them come from that, like a literal garage, to now fucking playing Coachella. It's like the coolest
that's
shit
awesome
ever. And like, I don't think it could happen to like a better group of dudes. Like, they're so nice. And it's like that shit can change people. Like, it can make people. Oh, yeah. Like, but like they have just been like, anytime I've talked to them, they've still been really cool. So it's like that is like probably one of the coolest things GhostXShip did that was like involved in that, like exploded just something way bigger than we would ever do, you know?
Right. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. Well, I guess it's time to wind down here. I appreciate you being on the pod, man. Thank you for reaching out. This was a great conversation. It was nice to meet you. If you have anything, thank you. If you have anything you want to promote, anything like that, now's the time.
Oh, yes. The main reason I hit you up. So a career mode, the cover band I was talking about earlier, we're playing the Buffalo area at the stage. It used to be Club Infinity, I believe. We're playing there April 29th on Saturday. It starts at 9. We're playing with this other local cover band called Off the Wall that they do similar stuff to us, but they're Buffalo homegrown boys. So if you're listening to this in the Buffalo area, you want to come hang out and sing songs that you've been listening to your entire life, definitely come hang out. I promise you will not regret it, because a lot of my friends who have started coming out now, they're like, man, that was so fucking fun. So if you're listening to this, I hope you come out and check us out. And if you heard about it from this, let me know, because that would be super sick. But that's the main thing. And if you want to hear me nerd out about pop culture with random band people all the time, just Metalcore Nerds. You can search on any podcasting platform or go to metalcorenerds.com. All of our links are right there. Very easy. And I talk about idobi.com a lot because I write a lot of reviews there now. So if you want to check out my written thoughts on music and TV and movies very soon, you can check that out there as well.
All right, that's great. All right, so if you guys like what you hear, like and subscribe. Make sure you give a follow to everything he mentioned. I will have all of his links and everything that he's involved with below in the comments, or, you know, above the comments, whatever. Yeah, like and subscribe, StouryTime Pod, across all platforms, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, bitch.